My name is Evelyn, and this is the day my family decided I no longer mattered. I was standing alone in the middle of O'Hare Airport in Chicago, clutching a thin paper itinerary that meant absolutely nothing. My suitcase was gone, my return flight didn't exist, and my son and daughter-in-law had just walked away without looking back. They didn't even hug me goodbye. Just a half smile from Tanya as she adjusted her sunglasses and rolled her designer bag toward the first-class line. She tossed the words over her shoulder like it was no big deal. "You'll figure it out." Adam didn't say a thing. He wouldn't even meet my eyes. I remember thinking how loud airports can be when you have nowhere to go. Announcements overhead, children laughing, suitcase wheels clicking over tile. And then the silence that wrapped around me like a fog, the kind that drowns out even your own breathing. No one stopped. No one asked if I was okay. A security agent walked by, gave me a polite nod, and kept moving. I held my purse tighter, like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. I didn't sit. I didn't cry. I just stood there, not knowing what to do with my hands, my face, my heart. The realization came slowly. This wasn't a mistake. It was planned. Just 2 hours earlier, I was part of something. A family trip, they called it. A healing break after the funeral. I had packed my softest sweater and tucked a photo of my husband into the lining of my carry-on. I even sold the gold band he gave me on our 20th anniversary to help pay for the flights. I thought I was helping. I thought they wanted me there. But the truth was, they had only bought me a one-way ticket. They hadn't told me. They didn't ask me. They simply decided. And now they were on their way to Florida, laughing, sipping coffee, probably posting selfies about togetherness. I stood frozen, like some abandoned relic in the middle of the terminal. I turned to the counter agent and showed her my itinerary. She scanned it, frowned, and told me the return ticket had been voided. I asked her to check again. She did. Still, nothing. Her voice was kind but distant, like someone trained to handle small disasters without becoming part of them. I nodded and stepped aside. I caught up with Adam and Tanya just before they reached security. I called out his name. He turned, slowly, as if I were an interruption. Not a mother. Not someone he used to love. I said I didn't have a return flight. Tanya was the one who answered. "Flights are expensive, Evelyn. You're retired. You've got time." That was it. That was all I was worth. A shrug and a suggestion that I figure it out. "Sell your phone," she added. "That'll get you a bus ticket, right?" Then she turned and walked off. Adam followed without a word. I watched them disappear into the crowd, into the blur of families and vacationers and couples holding hands. They were gone. And I was still there, with nothing but my purse and a name that no longer seemed to belong to anyone. People passed me like I didn't exist, like I was some invisible figure they didn't want to notice. And maybe I didn't want them to. Maybe it was easier that way. I stood straight, chin lifted, heartbreaking, but I didn't let the tears fall. Not yet. Not there. I had already lost my husband. I wasn't about to lose my dignity too. George and I were married for 45 years. Not perfect years, but ours. The kind built on routines that no one else noticed, but that made up the entire rhythm of my world. He made coffee every morning, humming something out of tune while searching the cupboards like I'd hidden the mugs just to keep him sharp. I'd tease him, and he'd smile, always pretending he forgot where I kept the cinnamon. In the evenings, he'd sit in that old brown chair that leaned a little too far back, reading the paper, one leg crossed over the other, sock half off. We raised one son, lost one baby, tried again, and built a life out of tiny moments. Birthdays with homemade cakes, late-night arguments that ended in quiet apologies, long road trips where we never turned the radio on because we liked the sound of each other thinking. That house was never just walls and windows. It was layered with decades of shared air and silent agreements. Then one Tuesday morning, it ended. He was there, asking if I wanted eggs or toast. And a moment later, he wasn't. A stroke, the doctor said. Massive. There was nothing they could do. The coffee was still warm in his mug when they took him away. The quiet that followed wasn't peaceful. It was thick. It echoed differently in each room. His shoes stayed by the door. His toothbrush sat beside mine. Every drawer I opened carried his scent, and for days, I couldn't bring myself to sleep on my side of the bed. Grief didn't knock. It just sat down in his chair like it owned the place. Some days, I'd catch myself talking out loud, forgetting he wasn't just in the other room. Other days, I didn't speak at all. When my son suggested the trip, it felt like someone cracked a window. Just a little air, just a little light. I didn't realize how badly I needed to feel like I still belonged to someone. It was a few weeks after the funeral, when Adam stopped by the house. He looked tired, distracted. The way people do when they've already moved on but feel obligated to check in. Tanya stood beside him, arms crossed loosely, offering me one of those soft smiles people give when they're about to make a suggestion they've already decided on. Adam said they were planning a little getaway for spring break. Just a short trip. Something light. Something sunny. Florida, he said. The kids were excited. He paused, then added that I should come. Said it would be good for me. Tanya nodded like it was the most generous thing in the world. A chance to breathe, to reset, to stop waking up in a house full of ghosts. The offer felt like a rope tossed to someone drowning. I hadn't been out of Illinois in years. The idea of ocean air, of seeing the kids laugh in the sand, of not eating dinner alone again, it stirred something inside me I hadn't felt since George was alive. I asked if they were sure. Adam said, "Of course. Your family." That word hit me square in the chest. Later that night, I opened my jewelry box. I hadn't touched it since the day we buried George. Tucked in the corner was the silver ring he gave me on our 25th anniversary. Not expensive, but real. He'd saved for it, surprised me on a Monday morning with a card and a kiss. I held it in my hand for a long time. Then I walked it down to the pawn shop 3 blocks over. I didn't cry when I sold it. I told myself I was contributing, that I was part of something again. Tanya had said everyone was pitching in. I believed her. I wanted to, because deep down, I think I needed to believe they still saw me as more than a widow with casseroles in her freezer. I needed to believe I still mattered, that they still wanted me there. I handed my printed itinerary to the airline agent with a smile that felt forced, hoping this would all be cleared up with a few clicks. She looked at the screen, then back at me, her brows pulling together just slightly. "I'm sorry, ma'am," she said, tapping again. "There's no return flight booked under your name." I blinked. That couldn't be right. We had a group reservation. I said the last name Monroe like it was a password to a life I thought I still belonged to. She checked again, slower this time. "There are 6 return tickets under that group. You're not listed on any of them." Her voice was calm, but careful, like someone who's seen this sort of thing more than they should. I turned, searching the crowd, and spotted Adam and Tanya near a coffee stand. They were laughing. Tanya had her phone up, taking a selfie with a peace sign. I walked over, still holding the itinerary, my hands damp with sweat. "Adam?" I said. "I don't have a return flight. Can you check yours?" He glanced at me, then looked at Tanya. She didn't hesitate. "Oh, Evelyn, we only bought you a one-way. Flights aren't cheap, and we figured you'd want to stay a little longer. You've got time, right? You're retired." The words hit harder than I expected. "I thought this was a round trip," I said, my voice already starting to slip. Tanya sipped her coffee. "You're an adult. You'll figure it out. There's Wi-Fi, there's always Greyhound." Her tone was light, like she was explaining the weather. Adam didn't look at me. He didn't say a word, just stood there shifting his weight from one foot to the other like he couldn't wait to be somewhere else. That was when I realized I didn't have my luggage either. Tanya had waved me off at the curbside check-in. "Let us handle it," she said. I had let her. I stood there, clutching a piece of paper that meant nothing, staring at 2 people who used to be my family. No hugs, no apology, just a slow, clean erasure of everything I thought I still meant to them. I sat down on a bench, just past the security checkpoint, not because I was tired, but because I needed to breathe without anyone watching me fall apart. The crowd moved like a river in front of me, fast and indifferent. I looked down at my phone, not to call Adam, but to remind myself that I still existed. Inside my bra, tucked close to my skin, was a small envelope I'd carried for years. George and I called it our just-in-case fund. Not for groceries, not for birthdays, but for emergencies, the kind you don't see coming until they're staring you down in public with a smile that says, "Figure it out." I unfolded the envelope slowly. Inside was $940 in crisp bills. It wasn't everything I had, but it was mine. Mine because I saved it quietly over the years. Mine because George insisted I keep something for myself, even when he didn't say why. I stared out at the terminal and pulled up the contact in my phone, labeled J.R. Lawyer. He was George's friend, helped us close on the house, wrote our will, promised me, once, that if I ever needed anything, I could call. I pressed the number, held the phone to my ear, and didn't flinch when he answered. I didn't explain. I didn't cry. I just said what I needed to say. "I want to update my will." He paused, then said he could make time that afternoon. I gave him the address of the law office, then ended the call. I sat still for a moment longer, then slid the envelope back into its place and stood up. They thought they had cornered me, that I'd beg for help or disappear quietly, but they forgot who raised them. They forgot the woman who managed a house on one income, who handled every bill, every loss, every quiet heartbreak without making a scene. What they didn't know was that I wasn't going to chase them. I wasn't going to explain myself. I had already started writing a new chapter, and this time, I wasn't asking anyone's permission. The law office on Jefferson Street looked the same as it did years ago, when George and I first walked in hand to sign our wills. The wood paneling still creaked underfoot. The front desk still had that little bowl of butterscotch candy, untouched and slightly faded. JR stood up when he saw me, a little older, a little grayer, but still, with that same firm handshake and quiet presence. He didn't ask what brought me in. He just pointed me toward the same chair I'd sat in the last time, and waited. I told him I wanted to revise everything. Remove Adam. Remove Tanya. Every account, every asset, every inch of land. Not out of anger, I said, but because they no longer saw me as part of their story, and so they wouldn't be part of mine. He didn't flinch, just nodded, and started typing. When he asked who I'd like to name instead, I slid across a pamphlet from my purse. Elder Bloom, a nonprofit supporting seniors who had been abandoned or financially exploited by their families. I found it at a community center months ago, never imagining I'd need it for myself. He reviewed their credentials, then looked back up at me. "It's a good cause," he said. I told him it was more than that. It was a promise that no one else would feel the way I did, standing in that airport with nothing but silence in their hands. We went through everything line by line. The house, the farmland, the accounts George left in my name. JR asked if I wanted to notify Adam of the changes. I said no. Let the silence speak louder than any warning ever could. By the time I stood to leave, the folder was thick with fresh documents and final decisions. I felt no regret, no guilt, just clarity. I wasn't erasing my son. I was removing the illusion that he still cared. What remained was mine, and I was finally ready to give it to someone who would treat it with dignity. Silver Pines sat at the edge of town, just past the old post office, and a diner that still served breakfast all day. It wasn't fancy, but it was clean, warm, and quiet in the way that calms you, not the kind that makes you feel forgotten. When I stepped through the doors, someone at the front desk smiled and said my name like it mattered. "Mrs. Evelyn Monroe, we've been expecting you." That sentence alone nearly unraveled me. I wasn't surprised. I wasn't an obligation. I was welcome. A small basket sat on the counter, with a ribbon tied loosely around the handle. Inside were crackers, a jar of blueberry jam, and a handwritten card from the director. They walked me to my room, a corner unit with a view of a courtyard where a wind chime moved softly in the breeze. My chair had already been placed near the window. My box of books was stacked neatly beside it. The sun hit the walls in just the right way, warm but not too bright. It felt like a space that had been waiting for me. I unpacked slowly. Not because I had much, but because for the first time in a long time, I wanted to take my time. I laid out a small photo of George on the nightstand, folded the quilt my mother made when I was still in my 20s, hung up my lightest cardigan, the one I always wore on Sunday afternoons. Later that evening, I walked to the dining hall and found a chair with my name written on a small place card. Evelyn. No title, no label, just me. I sat down. No one asked what I could offer. No one needed me to pay for their comfort or fix their life. They simply asked how I liked my tea. It wasn't a palace. It wasn't perfect. But it was mine. And for the first time since George died, I wasn't someone's afterthought. I wasn't just a mom. I was a person again. And that quiet realization filled every corner of the room more than any welcome banner ever could. It started with a phone call just after 9 in the morning, then another, then 16 more before the day was through. My phone lit up over and over again, the name Adam Monroe flashing across the screen like an alarm I had already chosen to silence. I didn't answer. Not the first call, not the fourth, not the one that came in just before midnight. I let them ring and ring until the noise faded into stillness. I had no more words left to spend on people who once spent me like pocket change. The next morning, the email came. The subject line read, "I'm sorry, Mom, but at least, let us keep the garden." I opened it without flinching. I wasn't curious about the apology. I already knew it would be half-formed, wrapped in excuses, and trimmed with guilt. Adam said they had received the letter from the lawyer, that they were shocked, that they never thought I would actually go through with it. Tanya thought I would come around. He asked if they could at least keep the land behind the house. The garden, he said, the one the kids helped plant. It meant something to them. What he didn't mention was how many years that garden grew without my name. How many pictures did Tanya post online, calling it her sacred space, without once saying thank you to the woman who paid for the soil? Who watered it the first summer? Who pulled weeds when no one else noticed? He ended the email with a plea. Just one call, Mom, 5 minutes. I read that line slowly, twice. Then I closed the laptop and leaned back in my chair. I didn't feel angry. I didn't feel sad. I felt finished. They thought I wouldn't follow through. They thought I was bluffing. That age made me easy to manipulate. That grief made me quiet. That love made me weak. But what they never understood was that quiet doesn't mean powerless. And love, when it's betrayed, doesn't vanish. It just redirects. I didn't owe them the land. I didn't owe them my name on a deed or a check or a Sunday voicemail. What they had inherited wasn't just money. It was trust. And they spent the whole day leaving me standing at that airport. At Silver Pines, no one asked about my will. No one cared what I owned. They asked how I slept. They saved me a seat at dinner. They knew when I liked chamomile instead of peppermint. And in those small gestures, I found more belonging than I had in years of family gatherings where I was there but never seen. I powered off my phone and opened my journal. The air outside was soft, the light just beginning to stretch across the courtyard. Somewhere down the hall, someone was laughing, not politely, deeply, fully. I smiled. On a fresh page, I wrote a single line. Some things you inherit, others you reclaim. Then I closed the cover, stood up, and stepped outside. Not to look back, just to feel the Sunday. At Silver Pines, my days look nothing like they used to. I take a watercolor class on Thursdays. My brush strokes are shaky, but the colors make me feel awake in a way I haven't felt in years. I joined a book circle with 6 women and one quiet man who brings crossword puzzles to share. We argue about plot twists, drink tea with names I can't pronounce, and laugh too hard over the smallest things. No one ever looks past me here. They look right at me and say my name like it's a hello, not an afterthought. My favorite part of the day is when someone knocks on my door at 5 and says, "Dinner's ready." Not because they want anything from me, just because they want me there. There's a chair with my name on it, and when I sit down, I know I'm exactly where I'm meant to be. I'm no longer someone's backup plan or background noise. I'm Evelyn, a woman who chose to begin again, a woman who gave up a house full of silence for a home full of voices that remember how to care. If you're listening to this and wondering if it's too late for you, let me tell you something I've come to believe with my whole heart. You are not invisible. You are not used up. And you are not too old to matter. The world may have forgotten how to see you, but you still get to decide how your story ends. I did. And I chose peace, my own name, and a legacy made not of what I left behind, but of what I chose to build from the moment I stopped waiting to be invited.